again. This is Swaiba, the Audible African Woman, Kenya's election series 2022. Elections were done. Women turned up as voters, but also as leaders. I was actually reading research by the GEC, which said that twice the number of women battled it out in the gubernatorial seats compared with previous elections.
Wow.
And so today we are going to talk about voter apathy. We've had people talk about, voter apathy and gendered voter apathy. And but we need to unpack this because when people say that Kenyans are jaded, but also women are jaded and are not perhaps showing up for democratic and governance processes, what are we really saying? And to help us do that today is my friend, Swaiba podcast strategist, who will introduce herself, but also a lawyer, right?
Yes.
Yes. So
Advocate.
Advocate. I'm so sorry. Yes. Ms. Njambi, Liz,
Yeah.
please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Nyambura and the entire Swaiba family for having me here. So my name is Elizabeth Jambi. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I am a founder and CEO of Wakilisha Initiative, which is a nonprofit that works to promote access to justice for children in conflict with the law. I'm also a podcast strategist for various podcasts, including Swaiba podcast. But today I am here as a young African woman living in this beautiful country, Kenya. Thank you for having me.
Well, as I alluded in the beginning of the conversation, when we talk about apathy or when we say, Kenyans are indifferent, I feel like we are being a little lazy when we don't unpack these things. As a young woman and as a young Kenyan, what do you think has led to the feeling of indifference? And is it an actual feeling or are we putting it on the citizens?
It is an actual feeling, and I think the numbers speak for themselves. We've had the lowest turnout, just generally, first of all, since all the elections that we've had under the Constitution of Kenya 2010. This has been the lowest voter turnout ever.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's even worse amongst the youth because, of course, the youth make the majority of the population in Kenya, but also as voters, they were expected to be the majority voters, or at least the majority new voters, because we have people turning 18 every now and then. Yes.
Yeah.
So the IEBC was actually targeting, I think, about 6 million new registered voters, but they only registered about 2.5 million. So that's half already, less than half
Less than
of
half
the
of
targeted group,
yes.
right? So one, it is real. We do have voter apathy, and especially amongst the youth. And as young women, it's definitely real that a lot of us are not feeling like we need to vote or we want to vote. And there's a lot of reasons that have caused that.
Would you touch some of these reasons and perhaps allude to? I mean, because we say representation politics, and we say that young people do not feel represented, but what are we actually saying in terms of one around the elections, but also because governance processes are just not only happen around elections. Governance processes happen beyond elections.
Yeah.
What's the gap? What's the deficit? And can we name it specifically?
Yeah, because there's a direct link between voting and governance, right? And voting is a democratic process.
Yeah.
If I speak for myself and the age of voters that voted for the first time in 2017, and we were very excited. I remember I was honestly up at 4:30 a.m.
And then what happens?
And then this time I voted at I think for something p.m. just before they closed.
Opposite, the actual opposite.
Yeah, and I was still going through that process internally. Do I go to vote? Should I go to vote? And for a lot of us that voted then for the first time, there's the question on what did that vote that I cast then do for me? What has it done in the past 5 years? And for a majority of youth and young women, the answer that they think and they feel is correct and true is that they feel it has done nothing, right? A lot of us are unemployed. You had Joy Mala, I think, on the first episode of this series, and she said, of the considered employed persons, 70% of those who are women are self-employed. So it's not formal employment with an organization as an employee. It's a woman has started her business and things like that. So there's the feeling that these elections are not doing anything for us. we are having to go to find solutions for
Other
ourselves.
spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's table banking, which we've talked about a number of times. There's we're starting our own businesses as opposed to waiting for opportunities that are created for us. And so then you're thinking, okay, so if I wake up and vote, I'm getting someone else a job.
And you are
I'm
without
remaining
one.
jobless.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why should I wake up, spend my entire day, go find someone else a job, and I remain jobless? And I don't think that they're going to put that much effort into getting me a
A
job,
job. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel they've not done anything for me. I've got my own opportunity. I've created my business and all that. This business has to thrive every single day for me to earn profit.
Mm-hmm.
So is there merit in me leaving my job for
To,
that one day to go and participate in a process that I feel will
well,
essentially do nothing for me?
yeah.
There's none,
So when
right?
we talk about, okay, sorry to cut you short.
Yeah.
So when we talk about public participation beyond elections, are we going to see the same thing carried forward? And if not, what do we need to change in terms of how we approach public participation for young women generally, just the citizen?
Yeah, I think the lack of public participation has been another cause of voter apathy because within those 5 years and also, in the previous years that we've had under democratic processes, young women do not feel involved. So you're not seeing any most outcomes of decisions as something that you can own because you are not part of the process that led up to it. And that's again another thing. So why should I go vote if whatever outcome one, the outcome of the vote itself, but also governance beyond that will not include me, will not include my voice, will not take into account my priorities or my needs. So then there's no point in participating. Yeah.
What in so leaving the electioneering period, coming back to governance, I think one of the things that even beyond elections we had seen, public trust had gone lower,
Yes.
right? Like the way people interface. And it's we say it's a cultural thing in terms of how we speak as Kenyans, in terms of whether we expect services from governments or not. But if for organizations like USAWA, but also for young people, in terms
Yeah.
of the reciprocity around, beyond voter education,
Yeah.
what would be the entry points of restoring this public? Because as you alluded, young people and women have lost trust in public or democratic processes, but also public institutions. How do
Right.
we create that interface?
Yeah.
And can we reclaim that relationship? Because then, unless people are going to form, not under the government, we still in
Yeah.
the government, and we
Yeah.
still have to interface
Yeah.
and work with the processes that are.
Yeah.
What are those entry points?
There are many entry points, and yes, it is very possible. The first one that we've just talked about is public participation. The minute people are involved in matters that affect them, that affect their daily lives, then they will be more inclined to participate, one, in the governance process, but also in future elections that then determine who has power in various governments, right? So it's in ensuring that public participation is done in the manner in which it should be done. And there's lots of guidelines, either from the law, from various government agencies. There's public participation that should go into procurement, into so many various decision-making processes. If you're ensuring that all the parameters are ticked, and the question is, don't involve me for the sake of saying, oh, Jambi was one of the participants. She came.
Yeah, we spoke about that. Yes, about
Yes.
rubber stamping.
But was my voice heard? Did I speak? And from that outcome, am I able to see that this is actually what I talked about and I am seeing it implemented? Or if what I had suggested has not been implemented, is there an explainer? Am I able to see, okay, so what I wanted is different from what Nyambura wanted, but Nyambura's makes more sense or it aligns more with county government plans and things like that. I'm able to understand why the government is making certain decisions. So that's
Or allocating
public.
money. Yeah.
Exactly. So the right framework should be enhanced when you're talking about public participation. And so that's from a CSO government perspective. But for us as young women, we also have to start plugging into these processes, right? But the question is how, right?
Yeah.
So maybe a lot of people don't know what to do. And I came about this toolkit that is quite interesting. So it's run by the Ministry of Devolution and Planning. They have a county governance toolkit that's available online. I think you can link it.
We can link it to the, yes, we can link it
Yes.
to the episodes.
Yeah, but if you
Yeah.
just look at County Governance Toolkit Kenya, you should be able to find it. And it has so many explainers in terms of how do you hold government accountable? What are you holding them accountable for? What do county budgets look like? Like what should be happening in August? Is it planning or is it reporting? So if you have access to that kind of information, then you know. So in September, our government will be releasing, say, Q2 financial reports. Okay, where exactly are they supposed to release them? How do I get access?
Yeah, how are they disseminated?
Exactly.
And
So
if I have a question, why do I direct it?
where do I direct it? Who
Yeah.
do I go to? So start from there and then find out what are the timelines for all these decisions happening, and then start asking questions. Put yourselves in those spaces and make your voice heard. Yeah. To the point that everyone they can't choose not to listen
Listen
to
to
you.
you. And
Yeah.
it's also that we must realize that organizing is just not grouping. It's that you have to be prepared to engage, right? So because
Right.
most of us, as in public participation has been reduced to numbers if you are a particular number of people. But then it's that if you do not understand the issue at hand or how the issue could be changed or what
Yeah.
are the mechanisms, then you are just a crowd.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you've broken down the manual, and we should be able to embed it on this podcast.
Can I just
Yes,
say
go
I
ahead.
like that you talk about numbers, because when you talk about numbers and gender, what comes to mind?
Two-thirds gender rule. Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to understand and to implement that it's not just a numbers game, right? When you're coming up with laws, the process of lawmaking, ideally laws are curing a mischief. So what was the essence behind saying let us not have more than 2/3 of one gender in any elective or appointive position? There was a reason. It was not just let's do our math and balance. It was because a
Council
certain
one,
gender was
yes.
not represented.
Yeah.
And what does lack of representation mean? Your priorities, your needs,
Issues,
everything.
your specific needs, because
Yeah,
I
because
also
there's
don't
no
look
one
at-
representing them are not addressed. So is it enough to just have the 2/3 gender rule on paper? The numbers they've been met? No. It's not just about meeting the numbers. It is in those spaces. Yes, you have the numbers, but are you actually taking into account those voices and those perspectives? That's when you're
That's what
meeting
was
the
about.
true essence of the 2/3 gender rule.
When you talk about representation and you talk about, especially because we're speaking about women, I feel like because you're a lawyer, I don't want to let you go without asking you the question about. Women generally feel alienated when it comes to justice, whether it's justice around SGBV issues or property rights. Are there processes in governance processes that we could make these things easy, especially because the women we work with as Swaiba are, women who are either in low income areas or both urban and rural. So when you look at justice systems, because I think when you talked about loss of trust in public institution,
Yes.
one of the public institution
justice system.
Yes, is the justice system.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, there are processes and there are organizations such as yours, right? And so it's having those organizations, then making sure that information reaches the women, because without information then you don't have power. And especially at those levels that you're working at, it's very easy. The notion is that justice is a preserve of the rich. If I don't have the money, I can't get a lawyer, for example. I cannot do ABCD, right? Or even if there's a matter that needs to go to court, if I'm being oppressed by a rich person, then I'm thinking,
It's a lost case.
it won't go anywhere, right?
yeah.
But it's passing information and making sure that those women in those spaces, you're bringing them to forums that they're able to understand. One, these are your rights, yes, and these are the processes that you can follow. So there's it. I would not give a blanket like these are the processes, but there's very many. If it's SGBV, if it's
'Cause
criminal
those
matters,
issues look
for
like they're
example,
lobby activist issues and not governance issues.
but they are governance
Yeah,
issues,
yeah.
right?
So
Because
how do we
they're
mainstream it
stemmed
back?
in
Yeah,
law.
exactly.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Yes.
no, go ahead. This is the thing about having a lawyer. You always have to, you know, find a
Sorry,
lawyer to speak.
what was
No, I
the
was going to ask
question?
in terms of how do we mainstream them back?
Ah,
Because how do we mean? Because now they look like it's a periphery of issues that NGOs do,
yes,
and
I
literally
get that.
not the
Not a governance.
responsibility
Yeah,
of the
it's
government. It's not
almost
not
that
a
it's
governance
almost that they're
issue.
not
Yeah,
part of the mandate of the
of the
government,
government.
right?
Yes.
And that's where you need to hold government accountable. So how do you hold government accountable? They are certain. For example, the law says that what are the laws on SGBV, etc., etc., and
Mm-hmm.
there's mandates in the law that either county governments or the national government has to meet, right? So are you holding those government structures accountable? It is asking the relevant questions. It is going and finding out what were the statistics in terms of, for example, the number of cases that were completed. Succession matters, because succession affects women a lot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it is making sure that you're looking at those numbers, you're looking at the merit in how those decisions are also arrived at, and you're holding government accountable.
Accountable.
Yeah.
Well, I have no other question except to ask: in the next 5 years,
Yeah.
where do you foresee one governance processes in Kenya, but
Mhm.
secondly, the place of second time or first time voters as women?
Yeah.
Are we going to see the replication of being jaded or apathy?
Mm. I mean, I hope not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do I see governance processes? I think we are a digital economy now,
Mm-hmm.
one as Kenya, but also the world is digital, right? So we need to create digital political movements that are safe for women, that are safe for young women. So that's where I see us in the next 5 years. So we are able to hold conversations that are not that are free of misinformation, disinformation, abuse also against women and
Yeah,
young
because I feel like
persons.
when the hierarchies of bureaucracy in digital movements might not be there, but then what you spoke about in terms of misinformation and online bullying for women is
Yeah,
an issue.
they have to
Yeah.
be safe spaces. And the reason why such spaces are important is because they're it's quite easy if they're well created to reach a very huge number of people, right? And we're talking about everything goes back to access to information. Do people
Mm,
understand
mm.
the relationship between governance and the needs that you understand? What does my governor have to do with my road or my hospital? Is that their mandate, or is that the national government
Government
mandate,
mandate, yeah.
right?
Just breaking down that information.
Where are you having those conversations? The
Yeah.
minute those conversations are open and safe for women, then they also understand the need to vote, and they'll go and vote in the leaders that they know will also be championing for their rights.
Well, this has been an exciting episode in terms of learning just how do we package information for women, but also what are the entry points when we talk about governance? And are we just jaded for the sake of being apathetic? Or is it that we find there are deficits in terms of how women and young women or youth generally are viewed in governance processes? Jambi, thank you very much.
Thank you
We
so
hope to
much.
have you soon, and thank you for helping us with curating this episodes. Asante sana. Please share, like, and leave your comments.